Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com, on Roku, Dwyer Boxing, and Sports News. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. There's a huge fight coming up. Huge. Between Andrzej Fonfara. You might recall he recently undressed Julio Cesar Chavez, and he did so from the pocket. And he's fighting former light heavyweight champion Nathan Cleverly. Right? The bout, and it's important, is not taking place in the United Kingdom. The bout is taking place in Chicago. Let's talk about Chicago for a second. Chicago is a rough and tumble town. Right? Active fight community there. They like to see action, right? The tradition of the town is rough and tumble. They don't like pretty boys. I know many of you are going to say, hey, didn't Sugar Ray Robinson fight a lot of his fights in Chicago? That's true. But just think about the fighters out of Chicago. They're rough and tumble. The guys who have fan followings in Chicago are guys who like to throw a lot of punches, guys who are offensive, guys with pop. Think Andrew Galata, right, who fought in Chicago a few times, right? The crowd, put it this way, certain parts of the country, the crowds like certain types of fighters. You need to consider the Chicago crowd to be kind of like the StubHub Center crowd in California. Right? They want to see punches thrown. They want to see punches landed. Right? This is not the place for subtle fighters who are, trying to win on style points. No, here, you need to be ready to throw blows. That's one of the reasons why I'm taking Andrzej Fonfara in this fight. If I had a gun to my head and if I were asked, give us one play, who's going to win this fight? I would pick Andrzej Fonfara. I am going to say this, though, right? And the reason being, really, because Fonfara is going to be the guy on his front foot. Fonfara is going to be the guy pushing the issue, right? Nathan Cleverly gives away his height, right? As I like to say, bends over and sprouts roots in the canvas and stuff like that. But even Cleverly, in my opinion, is going to realize that he cannot stay in the pocket against Andrzej Fonfara. He just cannot. So he's going to have to be on his back foot. And all I'm going to say is, the Chicago crowd is not going to appreciate his game. Right? Cleverly doesn't have the biggest punch. Right? Cleverly on his back foot moves a little bit too much. Is too much of a pretty boy when he's in that mode. Right? Fonfara is going to look like the Chicago guy. Right? Chicago's his adopted hometown. He's going to look like the Chicago guy, coming forward, ready to mix it up. He's going to be the one throwing a jab and then throwing heavy volume, trying to slow down Nathan Cleverly. Now, let me say another reason why I think Cleverly loses this fight. It's because Cleverly recently was fighting at cruiserweight. Now, I know Cleverly's in his late 20s, so I understand his body can deal with weight fluctuations a little bit better than it would if he were in his mid-30s. If he were in his mid-30s, to me, this fight would be a done deal. There's no way the guy would be able to lose the 25 pounds needed to go in the ring at this stage in the light heavyweight division, expecting to actually share the stage with a world-class light heavyweight. Right? Understand, you could have been light heavyweight champion a few years ago. Right? Cleverly lost to Sergey Kovalev, lost his title, I believe, in 2013. You could have been the man back then. But once you leave the division, once your body adjusts, once you've gained the weight, once you've tried to trade with Tony Bellew at cruiserweight, right? In my opinion, the chances of you being able to lose the 25 pounds, hop in the ring, then before a Chicago crowd, have to move around the ring on your back foot against a guy who hits harder than you, who's coming forward, who's throwing volume, who's the local hero returning home after conquering Chavez Jr., right? The odds of you pulling off that high wire act, to me, are remote. So if I had one bet to make, it would be to take Andrzej Fonfara to win this fight. You're getting him at a minus 200, folks. I'll tell you what, anytime you hear the words Andrzej Fonfara fighting in Chicago, all in the same sentence, without the word not someplace in there, you need to run to the window and place a bet. Right? This is a guy in front of his crowd. He's going to be on his front foot against a guy who recently had to lose 25 pounds to make weight, who isn't a big hitter. Right? For the hedge bettors, the bet I'm recommending, again, it's minus 200, would be Andrzej Fonfara to win the fight if you're going to hedge any part of this. Right? The hedge would be cleverly by decision. Right? Understand, cleverly is the underdog. Right? Cleverly by decision, because he's not going to knock Andrzej Fonfara out. Right? I understand cleverly fought some journeyman recently, dispatched him in the first round. Many of you are going to tell me cleverly weighed 179 for that fight. Right? And so he's ready now to step up to the higher rungs of light heavy. Give me a break. The light heavyweight limit's 175. Understand, we haven't seen cleverly in the ring against a light heavyweight contender for years. Plural. Right? Also, for those of you who want to believe that, Cleverly was never really a cruiserweight. Right? Cleverly was just fooling around at cruiserweight. You know what? Cleverly weighed 199 pounds. Let me repeat that. 199 pounds for his fight against Tony Bellew less than a year ago. So he's going to have to lose. He's going to have to come in 24 pounds lighter than that. Now, let's say he has one of these new exotic nutritionists. You see them. They're helping all these fighters cut weight. I'm sure they're going to give interviews and say, he's going to lose weight responsibly. Right? He's not going to lose any effectiveness. Okay, fine. They can sell that to the public all they want. But just understand the high wire act that is. He's going to lose weight, make weight, then gain weight. Then he's going to go out and have to fight on his back foot moving around the ring. Right? If I'm yo-yoing my weight, that's the last thing I want to do. Right? It's one thing if I'm going to be relatively stationary and my fitness isn't going to be called into question. But here, stamina is going to be an issue because Cleverly is going to have to vacate the pocket. Because I'm telling you, Fonfara is too much for him in the pocket. So, I know there's a Cleverly contingent out there. I understand Cleverly trained with Joe Calzaghe's dad. I understand Cleverly is a very smart guy. He's one of the smarter boxers out there. He's charismatic. He gives great interviews. I understand many of you would love to have this guy be the ambassador for boxing. Just understand the sport doesn't work that way. Right? You could look at a guy and say, wow, he would really be great if he were the best player in the sport. Right? But you and I know that, in the real world of sports, sometimes the best in the sport is someone who has issues. Someone like Mike Tyson who, had a fight with Mitch Blood Green in an alley in Harlem years ago, right? This is while Tyson was an elite fighter, right? We hear, my point is simply this. Don't get blinded by Nathan Cleverly's image. He's in over his head here, right? Chicago is a tough town, right? Chicago has a hardcore boxing community. Hardcore, right? The mainstream media loves to focus on, Southern California and Las Vegas, right? I'm telling you, there are many other towns with hardcore boxing crowds, right? Philly, right? Chicago. This is a hardcore boxing crowd. Chicago has a hardcore press corps, right? The people in Chicago know who Andrzej Fonfara is, even if most of the people in the United States don't, right? He is the hometown guy, right? He's the one returning home after a big fight against an overrated Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., right? Big fight where he embarrassed Chavez Jr. I'm telling you, the crowd's going to be buzzing. Now, in that atmosphere, you're going to drop Nathan Cleverly, right? Thousands of miles away from home, right? Who, in the last year, has had to lose 24 pounds to make weight. Who hasn't been in the ring with a light heavyweight contender for years. Whose last fight at light heavyweight was a destruction, to the point where Cleverly had to flee the division, right? I think this ends badly for Cleverly. I'm expecting Fonfara to win the fight. If I'm going to hedge the play, I'll take Fonfara to win at minus 200, right? Hedged with Cleverly by decision. Understand, Fonfara is the guy with the bigger punch. Let me say this too. A few years ago, Fonfara fought Glenn Johnson, the Road Warrior, when Glenn Johnson was a guy who you knew in the pocket was going to throw a lot of punches, right? Johnson, even when he loses fights, he's in there throwing a lot of punches, right? You understood that only a crazy man would stay in the pocket with Glenn Johnson and trade with him. That's exactly what Andrzej Fonfara did. Came in the pocket, started trading with Glenn Johnson. Believe it or not, Glenn Johnson was the one who wilted. That's how good Fonfara is in the pocket. Let me say this about Fonfara too. We don't talk enough about mental toughness in the sport, right? We talk so much about hand speed, foot speed, KO ratio, right? Let's just talk about mental toughness. You're in Canada, and you're fighting Adonis Stevenson, right? Light heavyweight champion. Stevenson has a huge left hand. In my opinion, he doesn't have much else, but we'll save the rest for another day. He has a huge left hand. You get drilled, you get badly hurt. You get dropped by Adonis Stevenson. Canada has a huge boxing community. That's another boxing mecca place, right? So they're going crazy for Stevenson. You're being blown out by the champ. How many fighters at that stage on the road against Stevenson in Stevenson's backyard getting worked? How many fighters would say, hey, it's not my night? Stevenson's drilled me. The crowd's against me. I know it's hopeless on the scorecards. Hopeless. Let me live for another day. I'm telling you, many fighters would think that. Andrzej Fonfara gets off the canvas. I'm telling you, I personally believe, looking at the film of that fight, that Fonfara, had he just pushed the issue just a little bit more, and folks, he pushed it big time, he should have taken Stevenson's title. That fight turns, folks. The guy who gets off the canvas, starts to spank Adonis Stevenson, right? When you see a fight like that, even when the guy loses, Fonfara lost that fight, but even when the guy loses, you need to just check the box that says mentally tough. You need to realize, hey, you know what? When the bullets start being fired, even after this guy is hit, he's going to continue to squeeze the trigger. So Fonfara, to me, is just too mentally tough. He's fighting in his city against a guy who hasn't even been in the division recently. I like him in this fight. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com. Let me also say this too about Cleverly, right? Cleverly is a guy who's too brave for his own good. Look at the way he fought Sergey Kovalev, right? In my opinion, Cleverly's going to have to realize that the pocket's not the place to be against certain fighters, right? Against Sergey Kovalev, he actually tries to hang in the pocket, right? Sergey Kovalev has one of the biggest punches in boxing. Nathan Cleverly does not. What was he thinking? I have to question. I really do. I have to question Nathan Cleverly's boxing IQ. Right? I think the guy has certain physical gifts that he's ignored, that he hasn't developed. Right? I like his opponent in this fight. I like Andrzej Fonfara. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section to this video. Thanks for stopping by.